They thought they were burying him. They didn't know he was a seed. When Principal Whitmore expelled Malik Carter, a farmer's son with perfect grades and dangerous potential, he believed he was maintaining the natural order. Another black student, pushed out. Another family farm ripe for acquisition. Just business as usual in Greenwood, but power miscalculated. Behind Malik stands a father who won't surrender, a teacher who kept receipts, and a billionaire with old debts to pay. The expulsion, notice, wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a declaration of war, and the Carters have never lost their land in battle. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Carter family farm as Malik stepped out onto the porch, his debate notes clutched tightly in his hand. Today was the day, the final debate. Competition at Greenwood High. At 17, Malik Carter stood tall and confident, his dark eyes bright with determination. This wasn't just another competition. It was his last chance to impress college recruiters. "You ready for today, son?" Nathan Carter's voice boomed from the barn doorway. The older man wiped his hands on a rag, his weathered face creasing into a proud smile. "Born ready, Dad," Malik replied, tucking his notes into his backpack. "We've been practicing for months." Nathan walked over and placed a strong hand on his son's shoulder. "You show him what you've got, what a Carter is made of." Malik nodded, feeling the weight of expectation on his shoulders. The Carters had worked this land for 3 generations, but Malik had dreams that stretched beyond the farm's boundaries. His father understood that better than anyone. The drive to Greenwood High was quiet, both men lost in their own thoughts. When they pulled up to the school, Nathan gave his son a firm nod. "Remember what I always tell you. Excellence isn't optional, it's necessary," Malik finished, the family mantra ingrained in his heart. Walking through the hallways of Greenwood High, Malik felt the familiar mix of pride and alienation that had defined his high school years. As one of the few black students, he'd learned to carry himself with a quiet dignity that belied the challenges he faced daily. Outside the principal's office, Malik was stopped by a stern voice. "Mr. Carter." A word. Principal Richard Whitmore stood in his doorway, his tall frame blocking the entrance to his office. His cold gray eyes fixed on Malik with barely disguised contempt. "Yes, sir?" Malik responded, keeping his voice steady. "I understand you're participating in the debate today," Whitmore said, straightening his already impeccable tie. "I just wanted to remind you that no matter how well you perform today, you'll never be one of them." The words hung in the air between them, their meaning clear. Malik felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. "With all due respect, sir, I'm not trying to be one of them. I'm trying to be the best version of myself." Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "Just remember your place, Carter." As the principal turned away, Malik took a deep breath. He wouldn't let Whitmore get under his skin, not today. The debate hall buzzed with excitement as students and parents filed in. Ms. Elena Brooks, the debate team coach, gave Malik an encouraging smile as he took his position. Across from him stood Brandon Whitmore, the principal's nephew, whose smug expression did little to hide his nervousness. "You're going down today, farm boy," Brandon whispered as they shook hands. The debate topic was announced. Should standardized testing be eliminated from college admissions? Brandon, arguing for keeping the tests, went first. His arguments were rehearsed, stiff, and full of logical fallacies that Malik noted carefully. When Malik's turn came, he stood with quiet confidence. "While my opponent makes some interesting points, they failed to address the fundamental inequities in our educational system." What followed was a masterclass in debate. Malik methodically dismantled each of Brandon's arguments, citing research and statistics with ease. He spoke with passion about educational inequality and the barriers faced by students from disadvantaged backgrounds. The audience was captivated, and even the judges couldn't hide their impressed expressions. By the time the debate ended, Brandon was visibly flustered, his face red with embarrassment. The judge's decision was unanimous. Malik had won by a landslide. That's my boy, Nathan called from the audience, his deep voice carrying across the hall. As people filed out, Malik caught Principal Whitmore's icy stare from across the room. The man's lips were pressed into a thin line, his hand gripping his nephew's shoulder tightly. Later that evening, as Malik celebrated his victory with a quiet dinner at home, Brandon Whitmore was seething with rage in his uncle's office. He made me look like an idiot. Brandon slammed his fist on the desk. Principal Whitmore leaned back in his chair. Calm down, Brandon. This isn't over yet. What are you going to do? He won fair and square. A cold smile spread across Whitmore's face. Perhaps, but there are other ways to win a war. That night, under the cover of darkness, Brandon and two of his friends snuck into the school. Using his uncle's keys, Brandon accessed the teacher's lounge and photocopied an upcoming exam answer sheet. They moved quietly through the empty hallways to Malik's locker. Are you sure about this, man? One of Brandon's friends whispered, nervously glancing around. Just shut up and keep watch, Brandon snapped, working the combination lock that he'd seen Malik use countless times. The locker swung, open, and Brandon carefully planted the stolen answer sheet between the pages of Malik's history textbook. Now we'll see who's so smart, he muttered, closing the locker with a soft click. The next morning, Malik arrived at school feeling confident. Yesterday's debate victory had already generated interest from several college recruiters who had been in attendance. His future was looking bright. The school day had barely begun when he was summoned to the principal's office over the intercom. Confused, Malik made his way there, unaware of the storm that was about to break over his head. Principal Whitmore was waiting, his face a mask of false solemnity. Beside him stood the history teacher, Mr. Gaines, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Carter, do you know why you're here? Whitmore asked, his voice dripping with fake concern. No, sir, I don't. Whitmore nodded to Mr. Gaines, who reluctantly placed a familiar exam answer sheet on the desk. This was found in your locker during a random inspection this morning. It's the answer key to tomorrow's history exam. Malik stared at the paper, in disbelief. That's impossible. I've never seen that before. Are you suggesting that someone planted it in your locker? Whitmore's tone was mocking. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I would never cheat. Whitmore shook his head, a cold smile playing at his lips. We have a zero-tolerance policy for academic dishonesty at Greenwood High. I'm afraid I have no choice but to expel you, effective immediately. The words hit Malik like a physical blow. You can't do that. I'm innocent. The evidence says otherwise. Mr. Carter, clean out your locker and leave the premises. Malik stood his ground. I want a proper investigation. I want to speak to the school board. That won't be necessary, Whitmore said dismissively. My decision is final. Stunned and angry, Malik was escorted to his locker by a security guard. As he emptied it, he noticed Brandon and his friends watching from down the hall, barely containing their snickers. Word spread quickly through the school. By lunchtime, everyone knew about Malik's expulsion. Ms. Brooks found him sitting alone, outside, his belongings packed in his backpack. Malik, this is wrong, she said, sitting beside him. I know you would never cheat. It doesn't matter what's true, Malik replied bitterly. It only matters what they can make people believe. I'll fight this, Ms. Brooks promised. This isn't over. When Nathan Carter heard the news, he dropped everything and drove straight to the school. His truck tires squealed as he pulled into the parking lot, his usual calm replaced by righteous anger. Principal Whitmore barely had time to stand, up before Nathan burst into his office. What the hell is going on? Nathan demanded. My son is no cheater. Whitmore straightened his tie, unruffled. Mr. Carter, I understand you're upset, but the evidence is clear. What evidence? Some paper conveniently found in his locker? After he embarrassed your nephew yesterday? I wasn't born yesterday, Whitmore. I suggest you calm down, Whitmore said coldly. Your behavior is inappropriate. Nathan leaned across the desk. My son has worked too hard to have his future destroyed by your prejudice. Something ugly flashed across Whitmore's face. Perhaps your boy should focus on farming, Mr. Carter. That's all he'll ever be good for anyway. The words hung in the air like poison. Nathan's hands curled into fists at his sides, but he maintained his composure with visible effort. "You haven't heard the last of this," he said, his voice low and dangerous. After Nathan left, Ms. Brooks confronted Whitmore privately. She had been suspicious from the moment she heard about the expulsion and had done some quick investigating. Of her own. "I've checked the security footage from yesterday evening," she said, standing firmly in front of his desk. "It shows Brandon entering the school after hours with 2 other students." Whitmore's face hardened. "And where is this footage?" "It's been saved in multiple locations," she replied, not intimidated. "This was a setup, and you know it. Be very careful, Ms. Brooks," Whitmore warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Making unfounded accusations could cost you your job, and with your mother's medical bills, I doubt you can afford to be unemployed." Ms. Brooks paled but stood her ground. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm reminding you of reality," Whitmore replied, smoothly. "Now, I suggest you return to your classroom and focus on teaching. That is, if you want to continue teaching at all." The ride home was silent. Malik stared out the window, watching his future crumble before his eyes. Nathan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. When they reached the farm, Nathan finally spoke. "We're going to fight this, son." Malik shook his head, defeat weighing heavily on his shoulders. "What's the point? They've already decided I'm guilty." Nathan turned to face his son, his eyes intense. "The world won't give you anything, son. You have to take it. That's what your grandfather taught me, and that's what I'm teaching you." Before Malik could respond, a sleek black car pulled up their dusty driveway. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out, his expensive suit incongruous against the rural backdrop. "Mr. Carter," the man called. "I'm Victor Langley. I was hoping we could talk." Nathan's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "About what?" Langley smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "About your future, and your farm." Inside the house, Langley laid out his proposal. His company, Evergreen Development, was interested in purchasing Nathan's farm for a new commercial project. "Your land is in a prime location," Langley explained smoothly. "We're prepared to offer you a very generous amount." Nathan crossed his arms. "This land has been in my family for generations. It's not for sale." Langley's smile tightened. "I understand your attachment, Mr. Carter, but times are changing. This area is developing rapidly. You might want to consider what's best for your son's future, especially given his recent difficulties." Malik looked up sharply. "How do you know about that?" "Word travels fast in small towns," Langley replied, though his quick knowledge of Malik's expulsion raised alarm bells for both Carters. "Thank you for your offer, Mr. Langley," Nathan said, firmly, "but my answer is no." As Langley drove away, Nathan watched him with narrowed eyes. "Something's not right about this," he muttered. That night, as Malik sat on the porch trying to process the day's events, he noticed an orange glow coming from the back field. He jumped to his feet. "Dad! Fire!" Nathan rushed out, and both men ran toward the burning field. They worked desperately with hoses and buckets to contain the flames, finally extinguishing the fire before it could spread to the main crops or the barn. Surveying the damage in the flashlight's beam, Nathan knelt and picked up a charred piece of cloth. "This wasn't an accident," he said grimly. "Someone set this fire." Malik looked out at the dark road beyond their property. "You think it's connected to Langley? Or Whitmore?" Nathan's face was grim in the moonlight. "I don't know, son. But I intend to find out." The next morning, Ms. Brooks arrived at school earlier than usual. The halls were still empty as she made her way to the security office, her determination overriding her fear of Whitmore's threats. "Morning, Frank," she greeted the security guard. "I need to check something on yesterday's footage." Frank hesitated. "Principal Whitmore was just in here asking for the recordings from 2 nights ago. Said there might have been a break-in." Ms. Brooks kept her expression neutral. "I'm looking into a different matter. Student altercation outside the gym yesterday." Once alone with the security console, she quickly found what she was looking for. Footage from 2 nights ago. There it was. Brandon Whitmore and 2 friends entering the school after hours, using what appeared to be a key. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. She watched as they headed toward the teacher's lounge, then later to the hallway where Malik's locker was located. Quickly, she copied the footage onto a flash drive and slipped it into her pocket. Evidence secured, she decided to approach another teacher, Mr. Cole, whom she trusted. "I need your advice," she told him during lunch break, keeping her voice low. "I have proof that Malik Carter was framed, but Whitmore threatened my job if I speak up." Mr. Cole glanced around nervously before responding. "Elena, you don't know what you're up against. This goes beyond Whitmore and his nephew." "What do you mean?" Cole leaned closer. "There's a reason certain students get pushed out of this school, and it's not just Whitmore's prejudice. There's something bigger going on." Before he could elaborate, Principal Whitmore appeared in the doorway, and Cole immediately changed the subject. The warning in his eyes was clear. "Be careful." That afternoon, Malik met with his best friend Riley Thompson at the local diner. Riley, a lanky white boy with shaggy brown hair and glasses, had been Malik's friend since elementary school. "This is complete garbage," Riley said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Everyone knows you wouldn't cheat." Malik sighed, stirring his untouched coffee. "Doesn't matter what everyone knows. Whitmore has made up his mind." Riley leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Then we need to find proof that you were set up." "How?" "Whitmore controls everything at that school." A gleam appeared in Riley's eyes. "Not everything. Not at night." That night, under the cover of darkness, Malik and Riley approached Greenwood. "Hi." Riley, whose father was the school janitor, had borrowed his dad's master key. "If we get caught, we're both in serious trouble," Malik warned as they slipped through a side entrance. "You're already expelled. What more can they do to you?" Riley replied, though his nervous laugh betrayed his anxiety. They made their way to the administration office where student records were kept. Riley's computer skills made short work of the password protection on the office computer. "I'm in," he whispered, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Let's check Brandon's records first." What they found was shocking. Brandon's grades had been systematically adjusted throughout his high school career. Failing marks mysteriously became passing ones, and average scores became exceptional. "Look at this." Riley pointed to a note in the system. "Special consideration approved by R.W. Richard Whitmore." "He's been falsifying his nephew's academic record," Malik said, anger building inside him. "No wonder Brandon got into Cornell." They dug deeper, finding similar patterns for several other students, all from wealthy, connected families. Meanwhile, records showed that in the past 5 years, over a dozen students from lower-income backgrounds, predominantly Black and Hispanic, had been expelled or pressured to leave under suspicious circumstances. "This is bigger than just me," Malik realized. "They've been rigging the system for years." A sound in the hallway startled them. They quickly shut down the computer and hid under the desk as the beam of a flashlight swept through the window. Once the security guard passed, they slipped out of the building, clutching a USB drive full of evidence. Meanwhile, Nathan Carter was conducting his own investigation. Victor Langley's sudden appearance, right after Malik's expulsion, felt too convenient to be coincidental. After a day spent making calls to farming contacts in neighboring counties, a troubling pattern emerged. Nathan spread his notes across the kitchen table as Malik returned home. Langley's company has bought up 5 Black-owned farms in the last 3 years, all under similar circumstances. "Similar how?" Malik asked, setting down his backpack. The owners faced sudden financial problems, legal troubles, or family emergencies that forced them to sell. And always for less than market value. Nathan pointed to a map he'd marked. These properties form a corridor along the proposed route for a new highway development. And guess who's on the planning commission for that? Highway? Whitmore? Malik guessed. Nathan nodded grimly, along with several members of the school board. The next morning, Ms. Brooks found an envelope on the driver's seat of her car, though she was certain she'd locked the doors. Inside was a typed note, "Stay out of this or you'll lose more than your job." Her hands trembled as she read it, but instead of intimidating her, the threat only strengthened her resolve. She drove straight to Malik's house. When she arrived, Malik and Riley showed her what they'd discovered in the school records. She added her security footage to their growing body of evidence. "We need to take this to the police," Ms. Brooks said. "Will they believe us over Whitmore and the school board?" Malik asked skeptically. "Maybe not, but we have to try. And if that doesn't work, we go to the media." For the first time since his expulsion, Malik felt a spark of hope. But it was quickly extinguished when he returned home that evening to find his father sitting at the kitchen table, staring at an eviction notice. "They're claiming we're behind on property taxes," Nathan said, his voice tight with anger. "This is false, and they know it. I've kept every receipt, every proof of payment." Malik felt the weight of defeat settling on his shoulders again. "Maybe we should just leave, Dad. Start over somewhere else." Nathan's hand slammed down on the table with such force that the papers jumped. "You don't run from a fight, son. You face it head on. That's what Carters do." The determination in his father's eyes rekindled Malik's fighting spirit. "You're right. They want us gone because they're afraid of what we might expose." That night, they were awakened by the sound of breaking glass. Nathan grabbed his shotgun while Malik called 911. When they ventured outside, they found their barn vandalized, a stark warning spray-painted across the wooden doors. "Leave or pay the price." The police arrived 40 minutes later, took a few photos, and left after suggesting it was probably just teenage pranks. Their dismissive attitude only confirmed what the Carters already suspected. They couldn't count on the authorities for protection or justice. The next day at school, Ms. Brooks noticed something strange about Brandon. The usually cocky teenager seemed nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder. During class, he dropped his phone, and when Ms. Brooks picked it up, she glimpsed a text message that chilled her. "Remember what happens if you talk. You're in this too deep to back out now." Brandon snatched the phone back, his face pale. For a moment, their eyes met, and Ms. Brooks saw something unexpected: fear. After school, Ms. Brooks drove to the district office to file a formal complaint about Malik's expulsion. The secretary informed her that the school board had already reviewed the case and decided to uphold Principal Whitmore's decision. "But they never even interviewed Malik or examined the evidence," Ms. Brooks protested. "The decision is final," the secretary replied, not meeting her eyes. As Ms. Brooks left the building, she spotted Principal Whitmore in the parking lot, talking with Victor Langley. The two men shook hands before Langley handed Whitmore an envelope. The exchange was quick, but unmistakable. That evening, as the sun set over Greenwood, casting long shadows across the Carter farm, Malik stood on the porch, watching his father repair the vandalized barn door. The injustice of his situation burned inside him, but he refused to let it consume him. Somehow he would fight back. Somehow he would expose the truth. As darkness fell, the distant sound of helicopter rotors broke the rural silence. Nathan and Malik looked up to see a sleek black helicopter approaching, its searchlight cutting through the night sky. "What now?" Nathan muttered, reaching for his shotgun. But the helicopter flew past their farm, heading toward the center of town. Curious, they got in Nathan's truck and followed. To their astonishment, the helicopter was landing on the football field at Greenwood High. A crowd had already gathered, drawn by the unusual sight. As Malik and Nathan joined the onlookers, the helicopter door opened, and a tall, distinguished man in an expensive suit stepped out. Principal Whitmore rushed forward, his face a mask of obsequious welcome, but the newcomer didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, his gaze scanned the crowd until it settled on Malik. "Malik Carter?" the man called out, his authoritative voice silencing the murmurs of the crowd. "I've been looking for you. My name is Charles Everingham III, and we need to talk." The crowd at Greenwood High stood frozen in stunned silence. Charles Everingham III commanded attention without effort, his tailored suit and confident stance marking him as someone accustomed to power. Principal Whitmore's obsequious smile faltered as the billionaire walked past him without acknowledgement, heading straight for Malik. "How do you know who I am?" Malik asked, standing his ground even as whispers rippled through the crowd. Everingham's Eyes, sharp and assessing, studied Malik's face. You look just like your grandfather. There was something like recognition in his gaze. We need to talk privately. Before Malik could respond, Nathan stepped forward protectively. Whatever you have to say to my son, you can say to me too. Everingham nodded respectfully. Of course, Mr. Carter. I wouldn't have it any other way. Across the field, Brandon Whitmore was visibly shaking. He backed away from the crowd, his face drained of color, before turning and sprinting toward the parking lot. My car is waiting, Everingham said, gesturing toward a sleek black limousine that had pulled up beside the school. Shall we? As they walked toward the vehicle, Principal Whitmore finally found his voice. Mr. Everingham, perhaps we should discuss this in my office. As principal, Everingham cut him off, his voice cold. You've done enough damage. We'll speak later. The dismissal was final, leaving Whitmore sputtering as they walked away. Inside the limousine's luxurious interior, Malik and Nathan sat across from Everingham, both tense and wary. I imagine you have questions, Everingham began, pressing a button that raised a privacy screen between them and the driver. About 100, Nathan replied, starting with why a billionaire is suddenly interested in my son. Everingham reached into an inside pocket and pulled out an old, worn photograph. He handed it to Nathan. That was taken in 1982. Nathan's eyes widened as he studied the image. A young black man in military uniform standing beside a much younger Charles Everingham. The resemblance between the black soldier and Nathan was unmistakable. That's my father, Nathan said quietly. Elijah Carter. Malik leaned over to see the photograph of the grandfather he'd never met, who had died before he was born. Your father saved my life, Everingham said simply. I was a young businessman, expanding into international markets. During a trip to Lebanon, our convoy was attacked. Elijah was part of the security detail. He pulled me from the burning vehicle and shielded me with his own body during the firefight that followed. The limousine hummed quietly as it drove through Greenwood streets, the outside world seeming distant from the conversation unfolding inside. He was injured protecting you, Nathan said. It wasn't a question. Everingham nodded solemnly. Yes, he recovered, but the injuries eventually led to his early retirement from service. My father never mentioned knowing you, Nathan said, his tone skeptical. Elijah wasn't the type to boast, but we stayed in touch until his passing. Everingham's gaze shifted to Malik. I've kept tabs on your family over the years, though from a distance. When I heard about what happened at Greenwood High, I decided it was time to get involved. How exactly did you hear about my expulsion? Malik asked. I have people who monitor news from certain areas. Your situation caught their attention because of your last name. Everingham leaned forward. I'm offering you a full scholarship to any university of your choice. Stanford, Harvard, Yale, wherever you want to go. Your academic record and debate achievements speak for themselves. Malik glanced at his father, then back to Everingham. I appreciate that, sir, but I don't want a handout. I want justice. Instead of looking disappointed, Everingham smiled. You really are Elijah's grandson. He straightened in his seat. Very well then. Justice it is. But I should warn you, this fight is bigger than you think. What do you mean? Nathan asked. The people targeting you aren't just small-town bureaucrats with prejudices. They're part of something larger. Everingham's expression darkened. I have resources that can help you, but pursuing this will be dangerous. We're already in danger, Malik pointed out. Someone set fire to our farm and vandalized our barn. Everingham nodded grimly. That's just the beginning. Are you sure you want to continue down this path? Malik and Nathan exchanged a determined look before Nathan answered. We're Carters. We don't back down from a fight. Then let's get started, Everingham said. Later that night, after Malik had gone to bed, Nathan confronted Everingham on the porch of the Carter farmhouse. The billionaire had insisted on stationing private security around the property, men in unmarked vehicles who disappeared into the shadows, visible only by the occasional glint of moonlight on metal. Why now? Nathan demanded, his voice low, to avoid waking Malik. My father died 15 years ago. You never showed your face once. Not at his funeral. Not when we struggled to keep this farm going. Why suddenly appear when Malik gets expelled? Everingham swirled the whiskey in his glass, staring out at the darkened fields. I respected your father's wishes. He was a proud man who wanted to make his own way. He asked me to keep my distance. And now, Everingham turned to face Nathan. Because the people who took your father's land once are trying to take yours now. Nathan frowned. What are you talking about? My father never lost any land. The east parcel. The 40 acres that bordered Williams Creek. Everingham watched recognition dawn on Nathan's face. It wasn't a legitimate foreclosure. It was theft, disguised as legal proceedings. How do you know about that? Because I've been tracking similar cases across 3 states for the past decade. Everingham's voice hardened. The same players keep appearing. Different names, same methods. They target black landowners specifically, using any means necessary to force them out. Nathan's hands gripped the porch railing tightly. And Whitmore? Langley? Local operators in a much bigger machine. Everingham finished his whiskey. Get some rest, Nathan. Tomorrow we start fighting back. The next morning, Malik, Riley, and Ms. Brooks gathered in the Carter kitchen. The arrival of Everingham had changed everything, providing them not only with resources but with validation of their suspicions. We need to focus on Victor Langley, Ms. Brooks said, spreading out documents across the table. His land deals are the key to understanding what's really happening here. Riley, hunched over his laptop, looked up excitedly. I've been digging into county records. Langley's company has purchased 12 properties in the last 5 years. All but one were owned by black families. And the school board connection? Malik asked. 3 members of the board are investors in Langley's development company, Riley confirmed, including James Whitmore, the principal's brother, and Brandon's father. Malik studied the map Riley had created, tracing the pattern of acquisitions. They're assembling land for something big, much bigger than just a highway connector. A resort development, Ms. Brooks said, sliding a document across the table. I found this in public records. Plans for a luxury resort and golf course. The projected value is over $200 million. And our farm sits right in the middle of it, Malik realized. As they continued their investigation, a car pulled up outside. Through the window, they saw Brandon Whitmore step out, looking nervously over his shoulder before approaching the house. Nathan intercepted him at the door. What are you doing here? Brandon's usual arrogance was gone, replaced by visible fear. I need to talk to Malik. Please, they're coming for me next. Inside, Brandon paced nervously, refusing to sit down. I didn't know how far they'd go, he blurted out. I just thought we were going to get you in trouble, not... He trailed off, running his hands through his hair. Not what? Malik pressed. They're dangerous, Brandon whispered. My father, my uncle Langley, they've done things, bad things. Like framing me for cheating? Malik asked coldly. Brandon flinched. That was my idea. I was angry after the debate, but everything else, the fires, the threats, that's them. He looked pleadingly at Malik. You have to believe me. I never wanted any of that. Why should we trust you? Riley demanded. Brandon pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Because I have proof. He pulled up a recording. I recorded my father and uncle talking last night after Everingham showed up. They don't know I have this. He pressed play, and James Whitmore's voice filled the room. Everingham's appearance complicates things. We need to accelerate the timeline, get the Carter boy out of the picture permanently if necessary. Langley's buyers won't wait forever. What about Brandon? Principal Whitmore's voice asked. He's becoming a liability. Then handle him, James replied coldly. Family or not, no one jeopardizes this deal. Brandon stopped the recording, his face pale. My own father, he whispered. Malik studied Brandon, searching for any sign of deception. Why come to me? Why not go to the police? The police chief plays golf with my father every Sunday, Brandon replied bitterly. Who do you think they'll believe? Before Malik could respond, his phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Behind your barn. Come alone. Information about Langley. I need to check something, Malik said, heading for the back door. Despite Nathan's protests, he slipped outside, moving cautiously toward the barn. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a woman Malik recognized as Teresa Monroe, James Whitmore's personal assistant. I don't have much time, she said nervously. But you need to know what they're planning. It's not just about the land. There's money laundering involved, millions of dollars from overseas investors. They've been using the school budget to clean the money. That's why they expelled me? Because I might expose their scheme? Partly. But mainly because your father won't sell. They need every parcel for the development to work. She glanced fearfully over her shoulder. I've copied financial records. I'll get them to you tomorrow. She pressed a flash drive into his hand. This has some of it. Be careful who you trust. As she turned to leave, Malik called after her. Why are you helping us? Teresa paused. Because my grandfather lost his farm the same way they're trying to take yours. Some debts need to be paid. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Carter farmhouse, where Malik, his father, Riley, Ms. Brooks, and, most surprisingly, Brandon Whitmore had spent the night planning their next move. Everingham had arranged for additional security after Brandon's revelation about his father's threats. We need to go public with what we know, Ms. Brooks argued. The recording, the financial documents from Teresa, the pattern of land acquisitions. It's enough to force an investigation. But we need to ensure Teresa's safety first, Malik insisted. If they find out she's helping us, she could be in danger. They already suspect everyone, Brandon said, the dark circles under his eyes evidence of his sleepless night. That's why I'm here. They'll be watching my house, my friends, anywhere they think I might go. Brandon's right, Nathan agreed reluctantly. We need to move quickly before they can cover their tracks. Brandon leaned forward, his usual swagger replaced by genuine remorse. I need to tell you everything, the whole scheme. For the next hour, Brandon detailed how his father, Principal Whitmore, and Victor Langley had been manipulating the school board for years. Their corruption went beyond just the land deals. They had been systematically ensuring that elite white students received advantages while pushing out black students who might threaten their status quo. The scholarship fund meant for disadvantaged students, Brandon explained bitterly. They've been using it to finance Langley's land acquisitions. The money never reached a single student it was intended for. Riley recorded Brandon's confession, his face grim as the extent of the corruption became clear. My father has a meeting with overseas investors tomorrow night, Brandon continued. They're finalizing the resort development plan. Once that happens, they'll move aggressively to secure any remaining properties, including yours. Malik looked to Ms. Brooks. We need to get this to the media immediately. I have a contact at the local news station, she replied. They'll run with this if we can provide enough evidence. As the group dispersed to gather what they needed, Brandon pulled Malik aside. I'm going back home, he said. I can get more documents from my father's study. That's too dangerous, Malik protested. It's the least I can do, Brandon insisted, guilt evident in his voice. I started this by framing you. Let me help finish it. Reluctantly, Malik agreed, but insisted that one of Everingham's security men accompany him, waiting nearby in case of trouble. That evening, as Ms. Brooks prepared to meet with her media contact, Malik received a threatening phone call from a disguised voice. Stop digging, or your father's farm won't be standing tomorrow. Malik immediately called Brandon, but there was no answer. Riley tried to trace the call, but it had been made using a burner phone. As night fell, Brandon still hadn't returned or made contact. Ms. Brooks arrived at the local news station with their evidence. The producer, initially enthusiastic, suddenly became evasive after taking a phone call in private. By the end of the meeting, the story had been effectively killed. Someone got to them, Ms. Brooks reported when she returned to the farm. They said the story lacked sufficient verification and would be too controversial for their audience. They're blocking us at every turn, Nathan said grimly. Everingham, who had been making calls from his makeshift command center in the Carter living room, finally had good news. "I've arranged for an independent journalist with a national platform to break the story. She'll be here tomorrow morning. They can't silence her. She's too well known." Later that night, Malik tried Brandon's phone again. This time, someone answered, but it wasn't Brandon. "Looking for your new friend?" James Whitmore's cold voice made Malik's blood run cold. "He won't be helping you anymore. Consider this your final warning. Back off, or what happens to him will happen to all of you." The line went dead. Malik immediately relayed the threat to Everingham, who doubled the security around the farm and alerted his contacts. "We need to move up our timeline," Everingham decided. "The journalist is driving in now. She'll be here by dawn." Around midnight, the security perimeter was breached. 3 men in dark clothing approached the farm from different directions. Nathan and Malik, along with Everingham's security team, were ready. Nathan fired a warning shot into the air, causing the intruders to retreat after a brief exchange of gunfire. "They're getting desperate," Nathan observed, checking that Malik was unharmed. "That means we're close to exposing them." At sunrise, the independent journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Wolcott, arrived, accompanied by her own security. For the next several hours, she interviewed everyone, examined their evidence, and verified their claims with her own sources. "This isn't just a local corruption story," she concluded. "This is systematic racial discrimination and financial crime at a level that warrants federal investigation." By noon, her exposé was online, its headline stark and uncompromising. "Corruption, Racism, and Land Theft, the Dark Secret of Greenwood High School." The story spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was being picked up by national news outlets. Drone footage of the Carter farm, juxtaposed with maps of the planned resort development, made it visually clear what was at stake. Brandon's recorded confession and Teresa's financial documents provided the smoking gun. Parents began gathering outside Greenwood High, demanding Principal Whitmore's resignation. The school board called an emergency meeting, obviously scrambling to contain the damage. Their response came swiftly. Ms. Brooks was formally terminated for breach of confidentiality and unprofessional conduct. The board also released a statement claiming that Malik's expulsion would stand, and threatening to blacklist him from every university in the state. "They still think they can intimidate us," Malik said as he read the statement. "They don't understand that we're past that now." The FBI arrived that afternoon, agents in dark suits filling the Carter farmhouse as they took statements and collected evidence. Everingham's legal team worked alongside them, ensuring that every piece of documentation was properly logged and preserved. As public pressure mounted, the school board tried to distance themselves from Principal Whitmore, suggesting he had acted alone. But Everingham was prepared for this. "It's time for our trump card," he told Malik and Nathan. In a press conference called on the steps of Greenwood High, with cameras broadcasting nationwide, Everingham revealed the final piece of evidence: detailed financial records showing how Whitmore and Langley had laundered millions through the school's budget, with the full knowledge and participation of the school board. These documents trace the money from foreign investors through shell companies and finally into the land acquisitions that have been squeezing black farmers out of their generational homes, Everingham explained to the assembled reporters. "This isn't just about one student's wrongful expulsion. This is about systematic corruption and racism that has destroyed lives and stolen futures." As he spoke, federal agents were simultaneously executing search warrants at the homes of Principal Whitmore, his brother James, and other school board members. The evidence seized would later prove damning: offshore accounts, falsified records, and communications with foreign investors that violated multiple laws. That evening, the news reported that an arrest warrant had been issued for Victor Langley on charges of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. But when authorities arrived at his home, Langley was gone, his private jet having departed for a non-extradition country hours earlier. "He had help," Everingham said grimly as they watched. "The news. Someone tipped him off." "Who?" Malik asked. "That's what we need to find out." Everingham studied the map they'd created of all the connections in the conspiracy. Langley was just the public face, Someone else is pulling the strings. As night fell on what had been the most eventful day of Malik's young life, he stood on the porch of his family home, looking out at the land that generations of Carters had worked. The farm was still standing, his father was safe, and the truth was finally coming to light. But Malik knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, Langley was plotting his next move, and whoever had helped him escape was still a threat. The battle for justice had only just begun. Inside the house, Nathan was on the phone with the FBI, providing additional details about the history of land acquisitions in the area. Ms. Brooks was coordinating with other teachers, who had witnessed the corruption but been afraid to speak out. Riley was sifting through digital records, looking for connections they might have missed. And Everingham sat at the kitchen table, his expression thoughtful as he studied an old photograph, the one of himself and Elijah Carter from so many years ago. Your grandfather would be proud, he said quietly as Malik returned inside. This is just the kind of fight he believed in. Malik nodded, feeling the weight of his family's legacy. It's not over yet, though. No, Everingham agreed, but we've landed the first real blow, and sometimes that's the hardest part. In the distance, police sirens wailed as more arrests were made. The corrupt system that had seemed so impenetrable just days ago was beginning to crumble. But as Malik well knew, wounded predators were often the most dangerous. Langley was still out there, and whoever had helped him escape was powerful enough to stay hidden. The real fight was just beginning. The morning after the bombshell expose, Greenwood buzzed with tension. Federal agents moved through town with purposeful strides, and news vans lined the streets. 3 days had passed since Victor Langley had disappeared, and despite an international manhunt, there was no trace of him. Malik stood in the kitchen of the Carter farmhouse, which had become an improvised command center. Maps, documents, and laptops covered every surface as Everingham's team worked alongside Riley and Ms. Brooks. Any updates on Langley? Malik asked one of Everingham's security specialists, a former FBI agent named Diana Reeves. She shook her head. Nothing concrete. The jet he escaped on landed in the Cayman Islands, but he wasn't on it when authorities checked. He must have had a second transportation plan ready. That level of preparation suggests he expected to need an escape route, Nathan observed, pouring himself coffee. He knew the risks all along. Everingham entered the room, ending a phone call. That was my contact at the Justice Department. They're pushing the local police to arrest Principal Whitmore today. But the corrupt school board is fighting back, claiming there's insufficient evidence linking him directly to the fraud. Malik frowned. But we have Brandon's testimony, the financial records. Whitmore's claiming Brandon is mentally unstable, acting out of resentment. Everingham's expression was grim. And some of the financial documents appear to have been tampered with. Someone with access has been covering tracks. Where is Brandon now? Ms. Brooks asked, looking up from her laptop. In protective custody, Everingham replied. After the threats from his father, we couldn't risk keeping him here. The television, in the corner, which had been playing news coverage on low volume, suddenly caught everyone's attention as Principal Whitmore's face appeared on screen. He stood behind a podium outside Greenwood High, surrounded by supporters. These outrageous allegations are nothing more than a vindictive campaign by a student who couldn't accept the consequences of his own actions, Whitmore declared, his voice steady and convincing. Mr. Everingham, a wealthy outsider with no connection to our community, has used his fortune to manufacture a scandal, targeting me personally because of his friendship with the Carter family. He's flipping the narrative, Riley muttered in disbelief, making himself the victim. Whitmore continued, his performance masterful. I have dedicated my life to this school, to these students. I ask only for a fair investigation, not this trial by media that has already convicted me in the court of public opinion. As Whitmore finished his statement, the camera panned to show several teachers and parents standing behind him in apparent support. How can they support him after everything that's come out? Malik asked, his hands clenching into fists. Fear and self-interest, Ms. Brooks replied sadly. Some of those teachers know their jobs depend on staying in line. And those parents? Their children benefit from the corrupt system. They don't want anything to change. Malik's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Your family is next. He showed it to Everingham, whose security team immediately began tracing the source. We need to increase protection here, Everingham decided. They're getting desperate. As night fell, the temperature dropped, bringing with it a sense of foreboding. Nathan and Malik had just finished checking the livestock when a sudden flash of light, followed by an explosion, rocked the barn. A firebomb had been thrown through a window, igniting the hay inside. "Dad!" Malik shouted, already running for the garden hose. Everingham's security team sprang into action, some fighting the fire while others secured the perimeter. Nathan and Malik worked frantically alongside them, dousing the flames before they could spread to the main structure. As they surveyed the damage afterward, Everingham's expression was stone cold. "This stops now. We're going on the offensive." The next morning, Riley arrived with news. He'd spent the night tracking the threatening text message Malik had received. "I followed the digital trail," he explained excitedly, setting up his laptop. Whoever sent it tried to route it through multiple proxies, but they made mistakes. The original message was sent from a phone registered to Teresa Monroe. "Whitmore's assistant?" Malik asked in disbelief. "But she's the one who gave us the financial documents." "Which could have been tampered with," Everingham pointed out. "It's possible she's been playing both sides." Ms. Brooks shook her head. "Or someone used her phone without her knowledge. We need to talk to her directly." Riley nodded. "I've located her. She's staying at the Pine Ridge Motel on the edge of town, registered under her maiden name." Malik and Ms. Brooks decided to confront Teresa, with two of Everingham's security people following at a distance. When they arrived at the motel, the manager informed them that Teresa had checked out that morning, but had left an envelope for anyone who asked about her. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "I fear for my life. James knows I took the documents. Meet me at the old Sullivan Creek Bridge at 2 p.m. if you want the complete files. Come alone, or I won't show." It could be a trap, one of Everingham's security specialists warned when they called to report the note. "Agreed," Everingham replied over the speakerphone. "But we need those files. We'll set up surveillance at the bridge. Malik, you'll make the approach, but we'll have eyes on you the entire time." The Sullivan Creek Bridge was an old stone structure spanning a narrow gorge outside town. As Malik approached at the designated time, he saw Teresa's car parked at one end. She stood in the middle of the bridge, clutching a large envelope, constantly looking over her shoulder. "I didn't think you'd come," she said as Malik approached. "You said you had the complete files," Malik replied cautiously, stopping a few feet away from her. "Everything's here, the real records, not the doctored ones they've been circulating." She held out the envelope. "James kept 2 sets of books. These are the originals." As Malik reached for the envelope, the sound of screeching tires split the air. A black SUV roared toward the bridge from the far side. "They followed me," Teresa gasped, her eyes wide with terror. "Run!" Malik grabbed her arm and they sprinted toward his end of the bridge, but another vehicle appeared, blocking their escape. Men in dark clothing emerged from both vehicles. Suddenly, Everingham's security team burst from the surrounding trees, weapons drawn. "Federal agents," one shouted, though Malik knew they were private security, not actual FBI. What followed was chaos. The men retreated to their vehicles and sped away, but not before one of them aimed his car directly at Teresa. She pushed Malik aside just before the impact. The car struck her, sending her body over the bridge railing and into the creek below. By the time they reached her, it was too late. Teresa Monroe was dead, the envelope of documents nowhere to be found. The local police ruled it a tragic accident, despite witness statements about the deliberate nature of the hit and run. Once again, Malik felt the familiar weight of injustice pressing down on him. "They killed her to silence her," he said later at the farmhouse, still in shock from witnessing Teresa's death. "Just like that." And the police report makes no mention of attempted murder or the missing documents, Nathan added bitterly. Everingham paced the room, his usual composure cracking. "I've contacted the FBI director personally. This has gone beyond local corruption. This is organized crime." That night, as Malik lay awake in his bedroom, his phone lit up with a call from a blocked number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Malik, it's Brandon," came the whispered voice. "I'm not supposed to be calling anyone, but you need to know. My uncle didn't just run. He's planning something big." "What do you mean?" Malik sat up, fully alert. "I overheard the federal marshals talking. They found evidence that Uncle Victor transferred millions into offshore accounts right before he disappeared. He's gathering resources, not just hiding." "For what?" Brandon's voice dropped even lower. "I don't know, but he mentioned something about scorched earth if he ever went down. Whatever it is, it's not over." After Brandon hung up, Malik immediately relayed the information to Everingham, who looked troubled. "That aligns with intelligence from my sources. Langley isn't the type to accept defeat." The next day brought unexpected momentum. The FBI, finally taking the case seriously after Teresa's death, conducted a series of raids across town. They uncovered a massive network of financial crimes linking the school board, Langley's development company, and several wealthy investors. They found evidence of mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy, Everingham announced, reading from a report sent by his Justice Department contact. "This goes back decades and involves millions of dollars." "What about Whitmore?" Ms. Brooks asked. "Still walking free, but that won't last much longer. The FBI has requested all school financial records going back 20 years. Using his considerable influence, Everingham managed to freeze the school board's bank accounts, throwing them into disarray. Board members began turning on each other, each trying to save themselves. Yet through it all, Principal Whitmore remained strangely calm, even smug during his public appearances. It was as if he knew something they didn't. "He still has an ace up his sleeve," Malik observed. "But what?" The answer came in the cruelest way possible. 2 days later, as Nathan was meeting with their family lawyer to discuss legal strategies, 4 police cars pulled into the Carter farm. Officers approached with a warrant for Nathan's arrest on charges of tax fraud. Malik watched in horror as his father was handcuffed and placed in a police car. "This is a mistake," he shouted, trying to reach Nathan, only to be held back by the officers. "It's okay, son," Nathan called as they drove him away. "Call Everingham. This is just their last desperate move." But Malik knew the truth. This was Whitmore's ace. While they'd been focused on the school corruption, he had been fabricating charges against Nathan. It was a calculated move to silence the Carter family once and for all. As morning light streamed through the windows of the Carter farmhouse, Malik sat at the kitchen table, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Ms. Brooks and Riley sat with him while Everingham paced, barking orders into his phone. "I don't care what it takes," the billionaire was saying. "Get Nathan Carter out on bail today. Pull whatever strings you need to." After ending the call, Everingham turned to Malik. "The tax fraud charges are completely fabricated, but they've been carefully constructed. Someone with access to financial records and legal expertise helped create this fiction." "Whitmore doesn't have that kind of skill," Ms. Brooks observed. "No, but he has connections who do." Everingham's expression was grim. "The good news is, we should be able to get your father released on bail by this afternoon. The bad news is that fighting these charges will take time they're hoping to use to their advantage." Malik stood up, determination replacing his exhaustion. "Then we need to move faster. We need to expose everything now before they can do any more damage." Riley had been unusually quiet, his attention focused on his laptop. Now he looked up, excitement in his eyes. "I think I've found something important. I've been digging into Langley's business dealings beyond Greenwood, and there's a pattern. He's been involved in similar land schemes in at least 5 other counties across 3 states, all targeting black-owned farms." He turned his laptop around to show them a map with red pins marking locations. Each of these represents a property acquired through suspicious means, sudden tax problems, unexplained legal troubles, or pressure tactics. And here's the kicker. At each location, there was a local official who helped facilitate the deals. In Greenwood, it was Whitmore. "So, Langley's operation is much bigger than we thought," Ms. Brooks said. "And someone bigger must be backing him," Everingham added. This level of coordination across state lines suggests serious organization. Malik studied the map, a disturbing thought forming. These aren't random acquisitions. Look at the pattern. They follow major transportation routes. It's like they're creating corridors of controlled land. For what purpose? Ms. Brooks wondered. Before anyone could answer, Everingham's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to the group. The FBI has just raided the school board offices. They're seizing everything: computers, files, phone records. That's good news, right? Riley asked. Yes, but we need to be prepared for Whitmore and his allies to retaliate. They won't go down without a fight. True to Everingham's prediction, the next day brought a new challenge. His company was suddenly hit with corruption allegations, triggering an SEC investigation that froze many of his assets. This is their counterattack, Everingham explained, looking more tired than Malik had ever seen him. They're trying to cripple my ability to help you. I'll fight it, but it means my resources will be limited for a while. Malik felt the walls closing in. Without Everingham's full support, and with his father in jail, their position was suddenly much more vulnerable. That evening, Malik received another call from Brandon. I need to see you, the principal's nephew said urgently. I found something in the files they're letting me review for my testimony. Meet me at the Sunset Motel, room 12 in an hour. Despite warnings from Everingham's security team, Malik decided to go. The Sunset Motel was a rundown establishment on the outskirts of town. When Malik arrived at room 12, he knocked, but there was no answer. The door was slightly ajar. Brandon? He called, pushing the door open cautiously. The room was empty, but showed signs of a struggle: an overturned chair, a lamp broken on the floor. On the bed lay Brandon's phone, a text message still displayed on the screen. Got what we needed. From the kid. Clean up the mess. Malik backed out of the room, his heart racing. He was pulling out his phone to call Everingham when he received a text message from Ms. Brooks. I had no choice. I'm sorry. Before he could process what that meant, his phone rang. It was Riley. Malik, where are you? Riley sounded panicked. Ms. Brooks just resigned. She sent a weird email to the entire faculty saying she was leaving town, but she won't answer my calls. I'm at the Sunset Motel. Brandon asked to meet, but he's not here. The room looks like there was a fight. Malik quickly explained what he'd found. Get out of there now, Riley urged. Something's very wrong. As Malik hurried back to his truck, he noticed a black sedan parked in the shadows at the edge of the lot. The driver was watching him. When Malik changed direction to avoid passing near the car, the engine started. He broke into a run, reaching his truck and peeling out of the parking lot just as the sedan began to follow. A high-speed chase ensued through the back roads of Greenwood, ending only when Malik managed to lose his pursuer by cutting through an abandoned farm property he knew from childhood. When he finally returned to the farmhouse, he found Riley and Everingham in intense discussion. We've lost Ms. Brooks, Everingham said as soon as Malik entered, and possibly Brandon too. Someone is systematically removing our allies. Ms. Brooks wouldn't just abandon us, Malik insisted. Her text said she had no choice, which suggests coercion, Everingham agreed. The question is, what leverage do they have over her? Riley had been investigating on his laptop. Her mother, he said suddenly. Ms. Brooks has been supporting her mother's medical care. According to the nursing home records I just accessed, Mrs. Brooks was transferred to another facility this morning, one whose location is listed as confidential. They're holding her mother hostage, Malik realized, feeling sick. And I've received news about my corruption investigation, Everingham added. The allegations trace back to fabricated documents that appear to have originated from within my own company. Someone I trusted has betrayed me. The walls were indeed closing in. With Nathan in jail, Ms. Brooks missing, Brandon possibly kidnapped, and Everingham under investigation, their coalition was crumbling. Malik paced the room, thinking furiously. We need to change tactics. They're picking us off one by one because we're fighting defensively. It's time to take the fight public, completely public. What are you suggesting? Everingham asked. A live stream town hall. We invite the entire community, The media, everyone. We present all our evidence, hold nothing back, make it impossible for them to silence us by making everything known at once. Everingham considered the idea. It's risky, but it might be our best option at this point. They can't disappear an entire town hall. Over the next 2 days, they worked frantically to organize the event. Riley created a secure website where copies of all their evidence would be uploaded simultaneously with the town hall presentation. Everingham called in favors to ensure media coverage, while Malik prepared to be the voice of the resistance. The night before the town hall, Malik visited his father in jail. Nathan looked tired but resolute. "I'm proud of you, son," he said, his voice strong despite his surroundings. "You're fighting the way a Carter should. We're going to get you out of here, Dad. Tomorrow, everything changes." As Malik left the jail, a Blacktown car pulled alongside him. The back window rolled down to reveal Principal Whitmore himself. "Mr. Carter," he called smoothly. "A word?" Malik stopped, wary but curious. "What do you want?" "Just to offer some friendly advice." Whitmore's smile was cold. "This town hall you're planning, I'd reconsider if I were you. You think you're untouchable? That's cute." He chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. "You have no idea what you're up against or how far we're willing to go." "Is that a threat?" Malik asked, his voice steady despite the chill that ran down his spine. "Consider it a reality check. Ask yourself, how many more people are you willing to sacrifice for your crusade? Brandon? Ms. Brooks? Your father? Think about it." Before Malik could respond, the window rolled up and the car pulled away. The threat shook Malik more than he wanted to admit. Back at the farmhouse, he shared the encounter with Riley and Everingham. "He's trying to intimidate you because he's afraid," Everingham assured him. "The town hall is the right move." The day of the town hall arrived. The Greenwood Community Center was packed with residents, reporters, and curious onlookers. Security was tight, with Everingham's private team supplemented by state police he'd managed to bring in through his remaining connections. Malik stood backstage, reviewing his notes one last time. Riley was managing the technical aspects, ensuring the livestream was working and secure. "We're going live in 5 minutes, Riley called. "The website is ready for the document dump as soon as you give the signal." Malik nodded, taking a deep breath. Everything they'd fought for came down to this moment. As he stepped out onto the stage, the crowd fell silent. Cameras flashed and he could see the livestream counter already showing thousands of viewers. "My name is Malik Carter," he began, his voice clear and strong. 3 weeks ago, I was expelled from Greenwood High on false charges. What I didn't know then was that my expulsion was just one small part of a decades-long conspiracy of corruption, racism, and criminal activity that has devastated countless lives in our community. He methodically laid out their case, showing documents on the large screen behind him, explaining the connections between Whitmore, Langley, and the school board, and detailing the pattern of attacks on Black-owned farms. "This isn't just about me or my family," Malik continued. "This is about justice for everyone who has been silenced, pressured, or forced out. This is about holding powerful people accountable for their actions." The audience was riveted, gasping at some of the more shocking revelations. Malik could see Principal Whitmore in the back of the room, his face a mask of cold fury. Just as Malik was about to reveal the financial documents showing the money laundering operation, the community center doors burst open. A masked man rushed, evading security and sprinting toward the stage. The crowd erupted in panic, but the man wasn't attacking. He was holding a flash drive, which he thrust toward Malik before security could reach him. "Play it now," the man shouted, his voice muffled by his mask. "Everyone needs to see this." Security surrounded the man, but Malik had already taken the flash drive. Something about the desperate urgency in the stranger's voice compelled him to trust the mysterious delivery. He nodded to Riley, who quickly connected the drive to their system. A video began playing on the large screen. The footage showed a meeting in what appeared to be a luxury hotel suite. Victor Langley sat at the head of a table with Principal Whitmore, his brother James, and several school board members in attendance. Also present were individuals Malik didn't recognize, wealthy-looking men with cold, calculating expressions. "Gentlemen," Langley was saying, "Phase 3 of the restoration project is now underway. With the Carter property acquisition, we'll have completed the southern corridor. The school board has been instrumental in facilitating these acquisitions by targeting the children of uncooperative landowners." One of the unknown men spoke up. "The investors are getting impatient, Victor. These small-town tactics are taking too long. We need results." "I assure you," Whitmore interjected, "we have the situation under control. The Carter boy will be expelled tomorrow, and his father will have no choice but to sell once the pressure increases." The video continued, revealing in explicit detail how Whitmore, Langley, and the board had orchestrated the destruction of black-owned farms for decades, using the school as a weapon to target families who wouldn't sell. The most damning revelation came at the end of the video, when they discussed what they called the Purge, a systematic effort to drive black students out of Greenwood High through false accusations, rigged grading, and manufactured disciplinary issues. "Remember," Langley said, "this isn't just about land acquisition. The project requires demographic control as well. Keep Greenwood the right kind of community, if you understand my meaning." The room erupted as the video ended. People were shouting, some in anger, others in disbelief. Principal Whitmore was already pushing his way toward the exit, his face ashen. Malik stood at the podium, momentarily stunned by what they'd all witnessed. Then he found his voice again. "This is the truth we've been fighting to expose," he said, his words cutting through the chaos. "This is what happens when power goes unchecked, when racism is allowed to hide behind respectability and policy." As he spoke, the masked man who had delivered the flash drive removed his mask, revealing himself to be Brandon Whitmore. His face was bruised, his lips split, but his eyes were clear with purpose. "I'm sorry," he said, addressing the crowd. "I was part of this. Not the big conspiracy, but I helped my uncle target Malik. I was raised to believe that people like the Carters didn't deserve the same opportunities I had." His voice broke. "I was wrong, and when I tried to make it right, my own family tried to silence me." The town hall had become more than just an exposure of corruption. It was a reckoning, a moment of truth for the entire community. As federal agents began moving through the crowd toward Whitmore and the other conspirators, Malik realized that their gamble had paid off. The trap that had been set for them had become the very thing that exposed the truth to the world. But as he watched Whitmore being led away in handcuffs, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that this victory, significant as it was, wasn't complete. Somewhere, out there, Langley was still free, Ms. Brooks was still missing, and whoever had helped Langley escape, whoever was truly behind what they called the Restoration Project, remained in the shadows, watching and waiting. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The morning after the explosive town hall, Greenwood was transformed. News vans lined the main street, reporters interviewed residents on every corner, and the hashtag #DashemGreenwoodCorruption trended nationwide. What had begun as one student's unjust expulsion had exposed a decades-long conspiracy that shocked the Gasabong country. Malik stood on the front porch of the Carter farmhouse, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of orange and gold. Despite the victory of the previous night, exhaustion weighed heavily on him. His father remained in jail, Ms. Brooks was still missing, and Victor Langley continued to elude authorities. The screen door creaked behind him as Riley stepped out, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing one to Malik. "Thanks." Malik took a grateful sip. "Any news?" Riley nodded. "The FBI arrested 4 school board members overnight. Principal Whitmore is being held without bail, considered a flight risk after what happened with Langley. And my dad? Everingham's lawyers are at the courthouse now. They're confident the judge will throw out the charges once they present evidence of fabrication." A black SUV pulled up the driveway, and Brandon Whitmore emerged, looking even more battered in the morning light. After delivering the flash drive at the town hall, he had been taken to the hospital for examination, then questioned by the FBI for hours. "You look terrible," Malik observed as Brandon approached. "Feels worse than it looks," Brandon replied with a weak smile. My own father did this when he found out I was gathering evidence against them. The admission hung in the air between them. Despite everything, Malik couldn't help but respect the courage it had taken for Brandon to turn against his family. What happens now? Brandon asked, leaning against the porch railing. We keep fighting, Malik said simply. This isn't over until everyone involved is held accountable. Inside the house, Everingham was coordinating with his security team and legal advisors. The corruption allegations against his company had been temporarily suspended, as the FBI recognized them as retaliatory, but the damage to his resources had been done. We've located Ms. Brooks's mother, he announced as Malik, Riley, and Brandon entered. She's been moved to a private facility in North Carolina, heavily guarded. We're working on a plan to ensure her safety. And Ms. Brooks herself? Malik asked. Everingham shook his head. Still no contact, but with her mother as leverage, we can assume she's being forced to stay silent. Their discussion was interrupted by the arrival of a package delivered by a nervous courier. After Everingham's security team checked it for hazards, they opened it to find a DVD and a typed note from Victor Langley. A reminder of what happens to those who challenge me. They played the DVD on Riley's laptop. It contained footage of Langley in an undisclosed location, looking relaxed and confident. Mr. Carter, Mr. Everingham, he began, addressing the camera directly. Congratulations on your little media spectacle, very dramatic. But if you think this is over, you're sadly mistaken. Langley leaned forward, his expression hardening. I've spent 30 years building my network. Do you really think a town hall will bring it down? I'm merely one piece of a much larger operation. He held up a folder with Nathan Carter's name on it. I still have the power to ensure Nathan Carter serves decades in prison. I have judges, prosecutors, and witnesses on my payroll across 3 states. Back down before it's too late. The video ended with Langley's smug smile. A tense silence filled the room. He's bluffing, Brandon said finally. He has to be. Maybe. Everingham agreed, but we can't take that risk with Nathan's freedom. Malik's phone rang, unknown number. He put it on speaker. Malik Carter? A muffled voice asked. Who is this? Someone who wants to help. There's going to be a private jet arriving at the county airfield tonight at 8 p.m. Langley will be on it, making a brief stop to collect documents before leaving. The country permanently. If you want to catch him, that's your chance. How do you know this? Malik demanded. But the caller had already hung up. It's a trap, Everingham said immediately. They're trying to lure us out. Or it's someone from inside Langley's organization turning on him, Riley countered. The voice was disguised, but it could be anyone, even Ms. Brooks. They debated the merits of acting on the tip until Brandon spoke up. I know how we can verify it. My father kept a private calendar of all Langley's movements. If I can access his computer, I can check if there's a scheduled flight tonight. It was risky, but with Brandon's knowledge of his father's passwords and security systems, they formed a plan. Brandon, accompanied by 2 of Everingham's security specialists, would enter the Whitmore residence to access the computer. The mission was successful. James Whitmore's calendar indeed showed a private flight scheduled for 8 p.m. at the county airfield, listed only as VL document retrieval. So it's legitimate, Malik said when they reported back. Langley is coming back, at least briefly. Which gives us a chance to catch him, Everingham nodded. But we need to be careful. If he's really returning, it's because he feels safe doing so. That suggests he still has powerful protection. Everingham contacted his FBI connections, who agreed to set up a surveillance operation at the airfield. By late afternoon, they had established a perimeter, with agents in plainclothes positioned strategically around the small airport. As dusk approached, Malik received stunning news. His father had been released. The judge had reviewed the evidence, presented by Everingham's lawyers, and recognized the charges as fraudulent. Nathan Carter was coming home. When Nathan's lawyer dropped him off at the farm, Malik embraced his father fiercely. Dad, thank God. Nathan looked tired, but determined. I heard about what you did at the town hall. You took a stand when it mattered, most. Pride shone in his eyes. Your grandfather would have been proud. Everingham approached with an update. Nathan, glad to have you back. We've received confirmation that a private jet is indeed scheduled to land at 8 p.m. The FBI has agents in position. I'm coming with you, Nathan declared. Dad, it could be dangerous, Malik began. This is my fight too, son. These people threatened our family, our land, our future. I need to see this through. As night fell, they positioned themselves near the airfield, watching from a safe distance as directed by the FBI. Right on schedule, a sleek private jet descended from the darkened sky, its lights cutting through the night. The jet taxied to a stop near a private hangar. Minutes passed with no movement. Then the cabin door opened and a figure emerged. But it wasn't Langley. It was a man in a pilot's uniform who looked around nervously before opening the cargo hold. That's not right, Brandon whispered, watching through binoculars. Langley always travels with security. Before anyone could respond, several FBI agents moved in, surrounding the pilot, who surrendered immediately. The agents then boarded the plane, only to emerge moments later, signaling that it was empty. He's not here, Everingham said in disbelief. Across the airfield, movement caught Malik's eye, a black SUV speeding away from the private hangar area. There, he pointed. That has to be him. The FBI agents scrambled to their vehicles in pursuit of the fleeing SUV. What followed was a high-speed chase through the back roads of Greenwood, with Malik, Nathan, and Everingham following at a distance in Everingham's armored car. The chase ended dramatically when the SUV attempted to cross an old bridge, only to find it blocked by police vehicles on the other side. Trapped, the driver skidded to a halt. When the FBI agents approached with weapons drawn, they found not Langley but his right-hand man, a lawyer named Scott Winters, clutching a briefcase. "Where's Langley?" the lead agent demanded. Winters smiled coldly. "Mr. Langley sends his regrets. He's currently on his yacht in international waters." The briefcase, when opened, contained only a single envelope addressed to Malik. Inside was a photograph of the Carter farm with the words, "Final Warning," written across it in red. Back at the farmhouse, frustration and disappointment hung heavy in the air. Langley had outmaneuvered them again. "The pilot is talking," Everingham reported after a call with his FBI contact. Apparently, this was an elaborate diversion. Langley was never going to be on that plane. Then why send it at all? Riley wondered. To distract us, Nathan realized. To pull resources away from something else. A terrible thought struck Malik. The farm. We left it with minimal security. They raced back to the Carter property, hearts pounding with dread. As they crested the final hill, relief washed over them. The farmhouse stood intact, the lights still burning in the windows. But their relief was short-lived. Inside, they found Everingham's security guards unconscious, clearly drugged but still alive. And on the kitchen table lay another DVD. This one showed footage of a warehouse interior. The camera panned to reveal Ms. Brooks, tied to a chair, looking, defiant despite her obvious fear. "Ms. Brooks," Malik gasped. A voice off camera, Langley's, spoke. "Your former teacher was quite helpful in providing certain school records, weren't you, Elena? Amazing what people will do when their loved ones are threatened." The camera moved to show Ms. Brooks's elderly mother in a hospital bed in the background, a man standing ominously beside her. "Now, a final lesson in power," Langley continued. "The Carter farm will be mine one way or another. You have until noon tomorrow to sign the transfer papers I've left with my attorney. If you don't, well..." The camera zoomed in on Ms. Brooks' frightened face. "I think you understand the stakes." The screen went black, then flickered back to life with an address and the time. 12 p.m. "It's another trap," Everingham said immediately. "Of course it is," Nathan agreed. "But we can't abandon Ms. Brooks." Malik studied the frozen image of the warehouse on the screen. "I recognize that place. It's the old textile factory on the edge of town. My debate team volunteered there last year before they shut it down." "You know the layout?" Everingham asked sharply. Malik nodded. "Every inch of it. And there's something Langley doesn't know. There's an underground access tunnel from..." when it was used for storage during the Cold War. Through the night, they planned their approach. Everingham's remaining security team would coordinate with the FBI for a two-pronged assault, one group approaching from the main entrance as a distraction, while Malik, Nathan, and two security specialists would enter through the secret tunnel. The next morning dawned clear and cold. As they prepared to leave, Brandon approached Malik. "I'm coming too," he insisted. "Ms. Brooks was the only teacher who ever believed in me, who saw past my family name. I owe her this." Malik hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close to me." At precisely 11:30 a.m., they put their plan into motion. The FBI and local police surrounded the textile factory, while Malik led his group to a concealed entrance behind an overgrown loading dock. The rusted door groaned as they forced it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. With flashlights illuminating their way, they navigated the musty tunnel. Malik's memory proved accurate as he led them through the labyrinth, beneath the factory floor. Finally, they reached a service elevator shaft with a maintenance ladder. "This leads directly to the main floor," Malik whispered. "If the video is accurate, they're holding Ms. Brooks in the central processing area." One by one, they climbed the ladder, emerging through a maintenance hatch into a dimly lit storage room. Through a dusty window, they could see the main floor and Ms. Brooks, still tied to the chair, with two armed men standing guard. There was no sign of Langley himself. At exactly noon, they heard vehicles approaching outside, the FBI making their presence known. "This is our chance," Nathan said. "When the guards are distracted by the commotion outside, we move." The plan worked perfectly. As the guards turned toward the commotion at the main entrance, Malik's group burst through the door. The security specialist quickly subdued the surprised guards, while Nathan and Malik rushed to free Ms. Brooks. "Malik! Nathan!" she exclaimed in relief. "You shouldn't have come. It's a setup." "We know," Malik assured her, cutting through her restraints. "The FBI is outside. Where's Langley?" "He's not here," Ms. Brooks said urgently. "He left hours ago. This is all just to—" Her warning was cut short by a new voice. James Whitmore stepped from the shadows, a gun in his hand. "How predictable," he sneered. "The noble Carters rushing to the rescue." Everingham's security men raised their weapons, creating a standoff. "It's over, Whitmore," Nathan said calmly. "The FBI has the building surrounded. There's no escape." Cold smile spread across Whitmore's face. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never about your little farm or your son's education. This is about reshaping the entire region. The restoration project will continue with or without Langley, with or without me." "What exactly is this restoration project?" Malik demanded. "The return of land to its proper stewards," Whitmore replied, a fanatic gleam in his eye. "Reclaiming what was lost through decades of misguided social policies." "You mean stealing from black farmers to benefit wealthy white developers?" Nathan translated bluntly. Outside, they could hear the FBI using bullhorns, demanding surrender. Whitmore's expression hardened. "This isn't over," he hissed. Then suddenly, lunged toward Ms. Brooks with his gun. Brandon, who had been standing quietly behind Malik, suddenly sprang forward, tackling his uncle. The gun went off, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling as they struggled. "Brandon, no!" Malik shouted, rushing to help. The security specialists moved in, and together they subdued Whitmore, who glared at his nephew with pure hatred. "You're no family of mine," he spat. "I know," Brandon replied quietly, "and I've never been more grateful for that fact." The FBI stormed in, taking control of the situation. As the agents led Whitmore away, Malik turned to Ms. Brooks. "Your mother? She's safe," Ms. Brooks interrupted, relief evident in her voice. "Everingham's people found her this morning. That's why Langley left. His leverage was gone." As they emerged from the factory into the bright afternoon sunlight, news cameras captured the scene. Malik and Nathan Carter, Ms. Brooks, Brandon Whitmore, walking out together as James Whitmore was placed in an FBI vehicle. It was a powerful image that would come to symbolize their fight against corruption and injustice. Later that evening, the FBI delivered stunning news. Based on documents seized from James Whitmore, They had tracked down Langley's yacht in international waters. With cooperation from the Coast Guard and international authorities, they had intercepted the vessel. Victor Langley was finally in custody. 8 weeks later, Greenwood had transformed. The old power structures had crumbled, and a new sense of possibility permeated the town. The Carter farm, once threatened by forces that seemed unstoppable, now stood as a symbol of resistance and resilience. In the Greenwood courthouse, Richard Whitmore sat stone-faced as the judge read out his sentence. 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, racketeering, and civil rights violations. His brother James had received 20 years the previous week. The entire school board had been disbanded, with most members facing charges of their own. Malik, sitting in the gallery between his father and Everingham, felt no joy at Whitmore's downfall, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Nathan stepped forward first. "Today marks a new beginning for Greenwood," he said, his deep voice carrying across the crowd. "But we mustn't forget that the injustice exposed here has deep roots, and those roots extend far beyond our town." Malik took his turn at the microphones, composed and articulate as always. "I won't be returning to Greenwood High," he announced, causing a stir among the reporters. "But not because I'm accepting the expulsion that started all this. Rather, because I've chosen a different path forward." That path had been crystallized during a conversation with Everingham the previous week. "You could go anywhere," the billionaire had told him. "Harvard, Yale, Stanford, they'd all welcome you with open arms after everything that's happened." "I know," Malik had replied, "and I'm grateful for that opportunity. But I've been thinking about a different kind of education." Everingham had raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to stay here, to help rebuild Greenwood the right way, to ensure that what happened to my family never happens to anyone else." The billionaire had smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Now, as reporters pressed for details about his future plans, Malik explained, "With Mr. Everingham's support, we're establishing the Carter Foundation for Rural Justice. We'll focus on protecting generational farmland, particularly for Black families who have historically been targeted by predatory practices." The announcement generated excited murmurs. One reporter called out, "What about Brandon Whitmore? Will he face charges for his role in your expulsion?" Brandon, standing quietly at the edge of the gathering, tensed visibly. Malik looked directly at him before answering. Brandon made mistakes, but he also showed tremendous courage in standing up against his own family when it mattered most. He's already doing the hardest work, rebuilding his life with a new understanding of right and wrong. Brandon's testimony had indeed been crucial in securing convictions against his father and uncle. Now estranged from his family, he had moved into a small apartment in town and was working with Everingham's legal team to document other cases of corruption. In the weeks that followed, the pace of change in Greenwood accelerated. Ms. Brooks, fully exonerated of any wrongdoing, was appointed as the new principal of Greenwood High by the State Education Board. "My first order of business," she declared, at her introductory press conference, "is a complete review of all disciplinary actions and academic records for the past 20 years. Any student who was unjustly pushed out or held back will have the opportunity for redress." Riley, inspired by his role in exposing the corruption, launched a digital journalism platform focused on rural issues. With seed funding from Everingham, the Greenwood Truth quickly gained a following for its investigative reporting on land rights and educational inequality. The most profound change, however, was happening at the Carter farm itself. What had once been a struggling family operation was being transformed into a hub for agricultural education and advocacy. On a warm Saturday morning, Malik stood with his father at the edge of their newly expanded fields. Dozens of volunteers worked nearby, rebuilding the barn that had been damaged in the attacks months earlier. "I never imagined our land would become something like this," Nathan said, pride evident in his voice. "Grandpa would be proud," Malik replied. "His land is helping others now." The sound of a helicopter drew their attention skyward. Everingham's chopper descended onto the designated landing area they had created near the house. "Right on time," Nathan observed. Everingham wasn't alone. As he approached, They saw he was accompanied by several representatives from the Department of Justice. Nathan, Malik. He greeted them warmly. "Our guests have some news I thought you'd want to hear in person." The lead investigator stepped forward. "We've been analyzing the documents seized from Langley's various properties. What we've found is staggering. Evidence of a coordinated effort across 5 states to systematically force black landowners off their property over the past 30 years. "The Restoration Project," Malik said grimly. The investigator nodded. "Exactly. And we've identified the primary financial backers, a consortium of wealthy individuals who've been operating behind the scenes, including several prominent politicians and business leaders." "Will they be prosecuted?" Nathan asked. "Absolutely. The first indictments will be announced next week. But there's more." The investigator handed Nathan a folder. "We've documented 48 properties, including your family's east parcel, that were illegally acquired through these schemes. The Justice Department will be working to restore ownership to the original families wherever possible." Nathan opened the folder with trembling hands, finding documentation for the 40 acres his father had lost decades ago, the land bordering Williams Creek. It would be returned to the Carter family. That evening, the expanded Carter property hosted a community celebration. People from across Greenwood and neighboring counties gathered to share food, music, and stories of resistance and triumph. Ms. Brooks sat with her elderly mother, who had recovered her strength now that she was safely back home. Brandon helped serve food, finding a measure of acceptance from community members who recognized his courage in breaking with his family's legacy. As twilight settled over the farm, Everingham found Malik sitting alone on the porch steps. "Penny for your thoughts," the billionaire said, joining him. Malik smiled. "I was just thinking about how different things were 2 months ago, how hopeless it all seemed. And now? Now I understand what my father meant when he said the world won't give you anything, you have to take it." Malik gazed out at the gathering. "But I also understand that no one can do it alone. It takes a community standing together." Everingham nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandfather would indeed be proud, not just of what you accomplished, but of what you're building for the future." Inside the barn, now rebuilt and stronger than before, Nathan Carter stood addressing the gathered community. Maps and plans were displayed on the walls, the blueprint for the Carter Center for Agricultural Justice and Education that would soon rise on their land. "For generations, this land has sustained my family," Nathan said, his voice strong and clear. "Now it will help sustain our community's fight for justice. What they tried to take from us, we're transforming into something they never imagined. A fortress of knowledge and power for those who have been marginalized for too long." As night fell completely, Malik rejoined the gathering. Looking around, at the faces illuminated by the barn's warm lights, his father, Ms. Brooks, Riley, Brandon, Everingham, and dozens of community members who had stood with them through their darkest days, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The school that had expelled him was now being remade as a place of true education and opportunity. The land that had been targeted for theft was now secure for generations to come. The powerful men who had thought themselves untouchable were facing justice. But most importantly, Greenwood itself was changing. Old wounds were being acknowledged, painful histories confronted, new alliances formed across lines that had once seemed impermeable. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Malik and his father stood on a hill overlooking their property. The rebuilt barn glowed with light in the distance, a beacon of what they had accomplished together. "Your grandfather used to stand right here," Nathan said softly. "Especially after he lost that east parcel. He'd look out over what remained and say, 'They can take some of our land, but they can't take who we are.'" Malik nodded, feeling the weight and wisdom of those words. "And now we're getting it all back. And more. Because you refuse to accept injustice." Nathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Your grandfather would be proud." As they stood there in comfortable silence, Malik knew that his journey had changed course but not ended. The expulsion that had seemed like the end of his dreams had instead launched him toward a purpose far greater than he had ever imagined. The fight for justice would continue, but now they faced it not as victims but as leaders, not in fear, but in strength, not alone but surrounded by allies. The Carter legacy, once threatened, now stretched before them into a future full of promise, a new beginning, built on the foundation of those who had fought before them, and secure in the knowledge that some battles must be won not just for oneself, but for all those who would come after. What would you risk to fight an injustice that seems impossible to defeat? The Carter family's struggle reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of courage begin with a simple refusal to accept what's wrong. When Malik stood against a system designed to crush him, he didn't just reclaim his future, he transformed his community and exposed decades of corruption that had stolen generational wealth from countless families. His story forces us to ask, where in our own lives have we accepted injustice as inevitable, when it might only take one voice, one stand, to begin unraveling the entire system? If this story of resistance, family legacy, and the fight against institutional corruption resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it too. Subscribe for more powerful narratives that explore the untold struggles and triumphs that shape our communities, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed or experienced an injustice that seemed too powerful to challenge? What gave you the courage to stand against it? Thank you for listening. New stories every day.